Over the past few years, California policymakers have laid the foundation to transform the state's energy system, including the advent of large-scale battery storage. The summer of 2021 would be the first big test of this new resource, and we thought this was an important story to tell, to document what we've learned and share some of those lessons with our colleagues around the country and around the world. California has long been on the front lines of a green energy revolution, but this part of the story starts with State Senator Nancy Skinner and her bill that ultimately led to utilities adding battery storage to their portfolios.
I introduced the bill AB 2514 back in 2010, and people thought I was nuts.
Senator Skinner was a visionary on battery storage, and thanks to her and other far-sighted policymakers, California is now committed to a carbon-free electricity system by 2045.
California is at the leading edge of that, and battery energy storage really is a foundation for that.
The challenges are immense.
What we're talking about is a level of infrastructure additions that we have not seen in the power system virtually in the last 50 years or more.
And the rewards in this dramatic shift can also be great.
Well, whoever writes the history of energy storage in the United States, I think this will be a big chapter.
With its gorgeous landscapes, sunny weather, and miles of beautiful beaches, California has always had tremendous appeal as a place to live and work. But by the 1940s, it became notorious for a much less attractive quality. Population growth, cars, and unregulated carbon emissions made much of the state synonymous with smog. In 1970, Congress passed the Clean Air Act, regulating emissions from mobile and stationary sources. But California was so choked by pollution, it was almost impossible for the state to meet these new guidelines. So, the state received a congressional waiver from the act that allowed California to enact its own stricter pollution controls than the rest of the country. Air quality improved, and by the 1980s, California was a world leader in clean energy.
California has served as sort of a giant global incubator of all these clean energy industries, starting with the solar industry, which really began in California. The first utility-scale solar installations in the world were here in our state, outside of Sacramento. Then the wind industry as well. In the 1980s, first utility-scale wind projects were here. Both those industries have gone on to become the fastest growing energy industries in the world and the lowest cost, so big success there.
Since that time, California has made huge strides in shifting away from carbon-producing energy sources.
We now get almost 2/3 of our electricity in the state of California from carbon-free sources like solar and wind and geothermal. And while geothermal produces power 24 hours a day, solar and wind are dependent on those resources, and we want to have the ability to provide 100% reliable electricity. That's absolutely paramount to our state.
Green energy is especially important considering the global climate change crisis and its impact on the environment.
Climate crisis is here and now. There's no denying it, but it could get worse. We don't want it to be worse. So if we can lessen our dependence on fossil fuels, not rely on them, and utilize our green energy and utilize it wisely, and then be efficient about our use of electricity, then the better we are.
You just look at what's been happening not only in California, but across the West, really across the world. The kind of temperatures and fires that we've been seeing, really scary. And so being able to transition our electricity system away from significant use of fossil fuels and carbon emissions is one of the defining challenges of our time for our industry.
But green energy sources, particularly solar and wind, have their limitations. During the daylight hours when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, the grid can provide the necessary energy to meet demand. But when the sun goes down or wind stops blowing, energy production from these sources also comes to a halt. This corresponds with the peak time of energy usage between the hours of 5 and 9 p.m., and is most acute in the summer when electricity demand in California is typically highest. To make up for this gap, California has largely relied on peaker plants that use natural gas to produce electricity.
Peaker power plants are the most expensive, least efficient, most polluting part of our fleet, right? So not the cleanest instrument.
Some of these facilities are over 40 years old, 60 years old, and they're really at the end of their life. Not efficient and not as reliable as they were in the past.
if you can meet those critical peak needs with battery storage that's being recharged from solar and wind and hydro and geothermal, et cetera, that's a reduction in emissions that's really valuable.
Lithium-ion batteries were familiar to California from its support for electric vehicles, but battery storage to power homes and businesses was an idea that always seemed to be off in the future.
I think this incubator function that our state plays is enormously important.
Seeing the crucial need for both clean energy and battery storage, a series of bills were introduced in California to decrease reliance on fossil fuel energy and use more renewables.
It's clear that the state, the legislature, the voters all wanted to move to a much bigger commitment of renewable energy.
So I was lead commissioner on energy storage at the CPUC starting in 2013. And when I joined the commission, it was implementing a law passed in 2010, AB 2514, which asked the commission to consider setting targets for energy storage for utilities. We knew that storage was going to be an important resource as a way to have flexible supply and be able to replace natural gas plants. So we knew it was going to be important at some point, we just didn't know when we need it. There was a lot of interest in storage, but everyone called it the Holy Grail. Folks said it was just too expensive to do.
But there were some investors and some companies that were expressing interest, so that's always a good sign, and we wanted to send the right market signals. So I pretty much used the argument that, look, as we move towards renewable energy, we want to send a good market signal to make sure that storage gets developed and becomes economically feasible and available, technologies are available.
In 2018, Governor Brown signed Senate Bill 100, making California the first state to commit to 100% carbon-free electricity, with an aggressive target date of 2045. But battery storage is still a relatively new industry, especially when it comes to utility-scale operations.
If you asked me 5 years ago, we were just talking about energy storage. We were just talking about the ability to store electricity. And now, by the end of this year, next year, we'll triple the capacity of energy storage that we have on our system.
The challenge for the energy storage industry in California going forward is going to be execution. And that means bringing solutions from idea to reality for the next 10 years or more. The challenge is humongous. And what we're talking about is a level of infrastructure additions that we have not seen in the power system virtually in the last 50 years or more.
And here's how it works. Solar and wind facilities convert sunlight or wind into electricity, and then that electricity is sent to a battery storage facility where over the course of the day, the batteries are charged to their full potential. Then, when the sun and wind are no longer generating, batteries discharge their power and send it to the grid.
There's been a lot of investment into the technology, and just the demand is high, and so that brings the cost down, which lowers the barrier of entry for some people who are looking to expand into putting storage in their portfolio. And so with a lithium-ion battery, when you pack a lot of those into modules, you can really scale up the amount of power that you can charge and discharge.
But lithium-ion batteries do present their own challenges. The first being a limited charge duration.
Storage resources have a limited amount of state of charge, so they can't run indefinitely. So you can turn them on at 5 p.m. and if they're running flat out, most of the resources we have on our market can run for about 4 hours. And 4 hours, as you know, isn't much time. And that's if they're charged up at the absolute maximum they can ever be charged up.
A number of agencies are working together to facilitate and deliver this new energy resource. Leading the charge is the California Independent System Operator, or California ISO.
California ISO is the traffic cop or air traffic controller of the energy system in 80% of California. We balance the system on a second-by-second basis, and we make sure that all the lines don't overload, and we make sure that we have sufficient supply to meet the demand.
We're in the first phases of trying to get to that 2045 goal. So we have some older gas generation on our system that we're in the process of retiring. As we retire that gas generation, now we have the gaps that generation is leaving that need to be filled by something else. Well, the resources that are filling it are storage resources.
So I think the challenge that we have right now is how do we transform this industry while keeping the lights on? So it's almost as if like you are trying to change your car while you are in the car and driving the car, and you cannot stop the car.
Another crucial consideration is operating the ISO market to make sure this new energy resource is both efficient and affordable.
All of the electricity, the bulk energy that's bought and sold, is transacted through a market. All the energy is priced. There's a price you have to pay to buy it, and the price that sellers get compensated as they sell it. And that's what the ISO oversees.
The bid structure that we currently have in our market design right now may not be very helpful for the storage, even though it has been used for decades for conventional resources, and it turns out to be the right decision. But for storage, it's actually creating a challenge, because the characteristic of the resource changes with how much state of charge that it has. It's not megawatt and price. It is actually how much it is storing.
And that's where CAISO has really stepped in to help with that grid coordination. We set an aggressive target, but we also had a flexible program where if storage wasn't cost effective, our customers wouldn't be paying for it.
Once the market rules and protocols are set, the California ISO manages the interface between the energy providers and the local utility companies. Bill Walsh is Vice President of Energy Procurement and Management for Southern California Edison.
Southern California Edison is the electric utility here in Southern California. We have a 50,000 square mile service territory. We serve 15 million customers with 5 million accounts, delivering all the energy needs for all of our customers. My group is responsible for procuring all of Edison's wholesale power for all of our retail customers. We go out and procure on the wholesale market to provide the electricity that comes to your house every single day. I'm really excited about the mission that we're on to clean the grid, to create a future for California that is emissions-free. And a big part of that is how we buy our power and what the sources of the power we buy from. We've contracted with NextEra for the power from both the solar facility as well as the battery for portions of McCoy and Blythe 2 and Blythe 3. So not only do they provide us clean energy through the solar power, they're also able to use their energy storage devices to move that power around when California needs it the most.
NextEra Energy Resources is said to be the world's largest producer of wind and solar energy.
So right here, I'm standing in the middle of our Blythe and McCoy Solar Energy Center in Riverside County in the desert of Southern California. This site covers several square miles. It's definitely a challenging process to develop a site of this size. This site itself has been in development since at least 2009 and has been in construction since on additional phases through 2020 and will continue into the next 2 years. So this site, when build out is completed, will have 1,100 megawatts of solar and 800 megawatts of 4-hour storage. By shifting the energy to the evening when it's actually needed by consumers, that's enough to power about 200,000 average homes. The facility here uses lithium-ion technology, and lithium-ion is the dominant technology for energy storage today. The reason for that is because the electric vehicle industry has spent over $100 billion in R&D to make sure that these batteries work and they work well. We're always looking for new technologies and how to better optimize this technology. In fact, we have a battery testing lab where we're constantly testing existing technologies, trying to optimize their performance, and how do we make it work better. Diversity is important, so we're always looking for new forms of storage.
Like NextEra, Southern Power, with a facility in Kern County, also produces and stores solar power in co-located facilities that include battery storage.
So this facility is the Garland Battery Energy Storage Facility. These energy storage packs collectively will draw energy from the solar facility and store that energy until it is needed for their customer. There are several different benefits of co-locating energy storage with the solar facility. Basically, we've been able to keep within the fence both of these projects that work very much together. When the charging has come from the solar facility into the batteries, all those control systems are all in one site. Another benefit is operations. As we maintain and operate the solar facility, we'll have very similar style of duties and maintenance for the energy storage. And we're on one site and kind of can keep our eyes on it at the same time.
Further south, AES's Alamitos facility became the first battery storage system to replace a natural gas peaker plant in the United States.
So the Alamitos Energy Center is actually comprised of 3 different phases of generation, right? We're a generation facility. We have technology all the way back from the 50s and 60s, what we call our legacy units. We've also got some brand new gas-fired technology that came online last year. And then to my left is our Alamitos BESS, or our battery energy storage system, which is rated at 100 megawatts. It can discharge 100 megawatts at any given time, and it can do it for 4 hours. So when we think about duration, it's 100 megawatts for 4 hours, or a 400 megawatt hour capacity. And I should say, battery energy storage is one type of technology for storage. Storage in of itself, long term, is really going to enable the vast amounts of sunshine that we have in California and in the West, and be able to harness that power, hold it for a period of time, and push the delivery of it till later in the day.
The batteries at the Alamitos plant are provided by Fluence Energy. They've watched the technology become increasingly more efficient and affordable.
Since the cost of batteries have been able to come down a lot, we are seeing the ability for batteries to compete directly against traditional thermal generation like coal or gas turbines that can provide either baseline or peaking capacity. So when you turn on your lights at 6 p.m. and everyone else is doing the same thing, your electricity is probably coming from somewhere like Alamitos instead of coming from a gas plant.
With so much green energy being introduced into the equation, the summer of 2021 was an important testing ground for California's evolving energy grid.
Last summer, we had about 200 megawatts of storage on the system. This summer, it's closer to 2,000 megawatts, so almost a 10-fold increase in energy storage in just the course of a year. It is a very rapid growth curve, and so it's just a tremendous opportunity to learn from the performance of these resources and share those lessons.
A big part of this summer is actually expediting battery resources. So we knew that there are a number of battery resources that were coming in, but before summer started, we were just expediting those battery resources.
Summer is always the biggest challenge for the California grid, and in 2021, everything came to a head with the extreme heat and other stresses, including a wildfire in southern Oregon on July 9th that limited power being imported into California from the Pacific Northwest.
The state of California is naturally importing power. We have a lot of load here in California, and many of those loads are served by venue of import power from Northwest, for example. And so on July 9th, there was a bootleg fire that actually took out 3 out of 4 large 500 kV transmission line. Now what that does is basically it created a shortage of supply to the state of California because you just don't have a way to transfer power from the Northwest down to California.
Yeah, July 9th was a very, very stressed day for the California grid. This was the summer when we really saw what the new wildfire risks could mean for our bulk electric system.
July 9th was one of those days when we were just really, really close. You know, we had basically every single resource on our system committed. Everything was running full bore. You know, if one more thing would have gone wrong, we could have really been in some serious trouble and we might have had to shed load.
And that took us right to the edge. We used every tool in our toolbox to maintain reliability. And fortunately, with good communication, good preparation, and the support of our energy market, we were able to ride through that and keep the lights on.
The ISO operations team really made sure that we had as much possible energy as we potentially could from our storage resources, as well as sort of scouring the state to make sure we had, you know, as many imports as we could get and as many other resources available as we could get to make sure we could serve load on that day. And they did a really tremendous job.
There's no question July 9th was the summer's most challenging day for the grid, and the extreme conditions resulted in the ISO declaring an emergency alert signifying insufficient power to meet demand. But on this day, the system was able to quickly dispatch about 1,000 megawatts of new battery power to help keep the lights on.
This summer has been a really fabulous moment for energy storage. You know, there's been some bumps along the way. It's a new technology. There's some lessons learned, but in general, the resource has performed really, really well, and we're really quite optimistic about its future on our grid.
You know, it's an exciting time for California. We're on the journey, we're moving forward, and there's a continued commitment to achieve greenhouse gas emissions reductions from our electric sector.
So this is a really exciting time to think about all of the clean energy that's coming from the sun and the wind, and to be able to store that electricity and use it when the sun stops shining, and to be able to meet the demands of the state.
The energy storage systems are a critical part of balancing out the system to maintain reliability and how the grid operates and delivers energy to its consumers ultimately in a reliable way. We're very excited about being a part of that formula and delivering a clean, reliable energy resource that we found in the energy storage realm.
If large-scale battery storage got its first big test in the summer of 2021, it earned a good grade. At the same time, valuable lessons were learned as the ISO continues to evolve the best tools to use storage effectively and also looks ahead to the integration of storage technology of longer duration. Operators will continue to monitor state of charge for the battery fleet. Crucial information because on days when storage is critically needed, operators must know the batteries are charged enough to deliver energy. If the state of charge is too low, they need to know there is enough energy on the system to charge them adequately. The ISO is also using new tools so scheduling coordinators can manage the state of charge. And it has created a new market model that allows storage resources to offer lower prices when a battery has a nearly full charge and higher prices as state of charge is depleted. With everything ISO operators learned about deploying storage during 2021, they are approaching the summer of 2022 with increased confidence about the grid. Under the continued leadership of Governor Gavin Newsom and the California Public Utilities Commission, the new uncertainties of climate change are being addressed. Record amounts of renewable energy are coming online. 85 clean energy projects were added in 2021 alone, with thousands of additional megawatts on the way for a healthy reserve and a grid that does not get pushed to the edge under extreme conditions. And while the story has focused primarily on the influx of large-scale storage on the California grid, smaller-scale distributed energy resources, including rooftop solar and residential energy storage, are also growing and will continue to play an important role in California's energy future. Reaching the state's energy goals will require continued innovation, creativity, and collaboration to make energy storage work at both the wholesale and retail level. And with the current battery technology, longer duration storage, and innovative new technologies to come, we can help achieve sustained reliability and a successful clean energy transition.